My name's Liam. What I'm about to share isn't fiction, nor the ravings of a deranged mind, but a reality that has torn through the veil of rationality, exposing its dark underbelly. Time's against me, so listen closely. The entity I've unleashed, which I call the Abyss, might already be lurking, stealthily advancing towards you as these words reach your ears. My fascination with the unknown led me to the fringes of bioengineering and astrophysics. I believed I could unlock the universe's secrets by manipulating subatomic particles. On a stormy night, in my secluded lab, I merged a series of equations meant to open the gates to the most inaccessible dimensions. Instead, I ripped through reality's fabric, allowing the Abyss to seep in like a lethal virus into our world. When the Abyss first manifested in my lab, it seemed nothing more than a wandering shadow, hidden in the room's most remote corners. Initially, I dismissed it as a trick of light, a side effect of too many hours spent in front of the computer. But it was far more real than any illusion. It moved stealthily, a dark presence feeding off the shadows. I underestimated its true nature, the terror it brought. I saw it as a temporary side effect of my research, a harmless glitch. But soon, the price of my arrogance became clear. In the following days, the city around the lab emptied as if struck by an invisible plague. Once bustling streets were now littered with abandoned vehicles, homes left open with tables still set, TVs looping the latest news of a world that had gone silent. The Abyss had extended its invisible tentacles, erasing all life and memory, leaving behind nothing but silence. One by one, my colleagues began to vanish, some found dead without explanation. The first lay in the control room, his face etched with an indelible horror, though his body showed no signs of violence. His glassy eyes stared at nothing, his mouth agape in a silent scream no one would ever hear. There was no sign of violence, no struggle. It was as though the Abyss had devoured him from within, leaving only an empty shell. My lab, only separated from my colleagues by a large glass window, provided a full view of the workroom. Through that glass, I could see their silhouettes moving frantically, fingers flying over keyboards in a desperate battle against an unseen enemy. They were attempting the impossible, desperately seeking a way to halt the Abyss's advance. It was in front of that large window that the nightmare materialized stronger than ever, turning an ordinary day into pure terror. Before my horrified eyes, the Abyss emerged from a dark, neglected corner of the lab. Silent and relentless, it advanced towards one of my colleagues, oblivious to the approaching danger. Before he could turn, darkness enveloped him completely, muffling his scream into a barely audible whisper. The same fate befell the others, one by one. A young researcher, typing frantically at his station, was caught off guard by a shadow that slithered under his feet like poisonous fog. Before he could rise, the Abyss enveloped him, leaving him on the floor, his face pale and twisted in a final expression of pure agony. Another tried to barricade himself in the adjoining room, pushing cabinets and tables against the door. But the Abyss, a force that knows no barriers, seeped through the cracks, enveloping him in a deadly embrace that extinguished his life in an instant, leaving the lab shrouded in tomb-like silence. Without warning, the dark presence stilled. Through the glass, I felt its gaze upon me, knowing somehow it was watching me. Then it dissipated, leaving me alone in oppressive solitude. Terror took hold. The silent screams of my colleagues haunted me, a harrowing memory that would never leave. I was alone, desperate, trapped in a nightmare I would never awaken from. Every creak of the floor, Every fleeting shadow was a source of terror. The lab's solitude became an overwhelming silence, amplifying my sense of helplessness as anguish consumed me further. I knew the abyss was still there, lurking, ready to claim my soul. I had no idea how to fight it, how to push back the darkness threatening to engulf everything. Days crawled by as I struggled to find a response, a way to rectify my tragic mistake, my arrogance, my folly. It couldn't end like this. No, it shouldn't. And at that moment of self-pity, a realization struck me. I was the only hope for a world now in ruins. I vowed to stop the abyss at any cost. I would avenge my colleagues, protect the last survivors from this unspeakable horror, even if it meant sacrificing my very soul. In the last hours before disaster was fully unleashed, I locked myself in my lab, surrounded by flashing screens and buzzing measurement devices, a sign of my battle against time. My quest for a scientific solution became an obsession, sifting through piles of research and scattered notes, desperately seeking an equation that made sense, that could actually reverse the chaos I had caused. My pursuit was no longer driven by curiosity, but by the need to correct a deadly mistake. As its presence grew more oppressive, I began to notice changes in my body. My hands' skin started to change. I could see through it, revealing the thin bones underneath, like branches in a harsh winter. Every attempt to touch solid objects became increasingly difficult, as if my own hands refused to obey, dissolving every time I tried to grasp or touch something. It was as if the abyss was absorbing me, erasing my presence from the world I once knew. After hours of frantic calculations, finally, amidst exhaustion and tension, the puzzle began to form. I found the key equation. Without hesitation, I entered it into the system. The result was immediate. The systems began to beep in unison, and a wave of pure energy was released. Reality around me reassembled, as if I were rewinding a film in reverse, and everything around me began to stabilize. But as order was restored, I felt a strange sensation, as if part of me had remained trapped in that moment of transition. Something was irreparably altered, but what? I felt suspended between different realities, and a growing anxiety warned me that something hadn't fully returned to normal. My heart now beats irregularly, in sync with something else, a remnant of the abyss, perhaps. Nights are a stage for vivid nightmares. Writhing shadows still remind me of that fateful day I watched my colleagues perish. A bone-chilling cold pervades me, as if that entity, if it can be called that, is calling me, trying to drag me back into its realm of terror. I move among the survivors like a shadow, a figure that instills fear and suspicion. Their faces, marked by the abyss's passage, fail to notice the ghost I've become. They don't see the path I've crossed to save them. My hands, once strong, are now as transparent as glass. I approach a frightened child, trying to touch his shoulder in a gesture of comfort, of reassurance, but my hand passes through him as though it were air. The terror in his eyes mirrors my own. I am an outcast, an unreal being, a warning of the catastrophe that almost swallowed the world. I walk through now empty streets, a desolate wasteland of skeletal buildings and abandoned vehicles. The silence is deafening, broken only by the wind howling through the ruins. I wander with the burning awareness that my very existence has become a bridge through which that insatiable darkness could once again pour forth, overwhelming the last trace of humanity like a plague seizing the innocent. I feel it. Its call grows stronger each day, a wave of terror rising inexorably. It's not a matter of if the abyss will return, But when? The only hope is that my sacrifice wasn't in vain, but that it might save someone, even just one. Keep your eyes wide open. Watch the shadows, for the abyss might be hiding in one of them, waiting for a gap to reemerge. When you feel a sudden chill that freezes your blood, when the silence becomes oppressive, you'll know the time has come.